Big news for all the winter weather lovers out there. We are going to get our first real taste of the season as we head through this week, and this one may last for a little while too. We're talking cold, even the chance for snow as well. So let's take a look at our pattern, which is going to evolve as we head into the week. And what you're looking at here is your Monday. And really all I want you to pay attention to is this area of cold weather right here. You're going to see that move into the central and eastern U.S. And we're going to see a pretty textbook positive PNA setup. And let me explain what I mean by that. Here we are Thursday. And what you're seeing here, this all starts with an area of generally low pressure out here in the Pacific. That helps to trigger this ridge, which we're going to see really build across the Pacific coastline. That's where we get the PNA. And when it's a ridge here, we call it positive PNA. And as that happens, the atmosphere responds with colder air in the central and eastern U.S. And that's a really good setup if you like snow across the country. And what we'll see as we move forward here into the upcoming weekend is this pattern really takes a strong foothold. And here we are in the weekend. There's that area of low pressure. Here's your ridge across the western U.S. And there's your bowl of colder temperatures. And that's a sign, not just that it's going to get cold, but this is also a decent sign for some wintry weather too. And I'll mention as well, this only helps, but the negative NAO, that's the North Atlantic Oscillation, is present as well. And that's why you're seeing this ridge out here near Greenland, Iceland. That's going to help to trap this colder air and prevent it from skirting back off. So that's going to lock us in with a nice start to December here. A really good look as we begin the new month. And even as we wrap up November, we're looking at these temperatures which are going to begin to fall. Now, we can also take a look at our temperature anomalies, and let me show you that here. Basically, what we'll take a look at is, I'll go to the 850s. This will give us a look at basically how the atmosphere is going to shift from warmer than average to colder than average. And if we move this into your Monday, here's Monday. You're seeing some colder air try to get in here Monday, but that's just the precursor. You'll see a little bit sneak in. What we're really going to pay attention to is once we get to Thursday, and you can see that right there. We're looking at Tuesday now, moving into Wednesday, and now here comes Thursday. This is your Thanksgiving, of course, and on Thanksgiving, there's that cold air seeping quickly, spilling more so into the U.S., and you're going to see this continuous highway right here just continue to feed it into the lower 48. So here's your Thanksgiving. You can see those temperatures quickly dropping across the country. Here we are on Friday. You can see them reaching now the southeast even and the east coast. On Saturday, we still have this nice feed of cold air rushing through the central U.S. So it's the central, it's really most of the U.S. here, basically the north central U.S. To the southern U.S. and to the east coast as well. And into Sunday, there you are. There's that cold air still sticking around. And I'll give you a little sneak peek at this. We'll cover this in the next video perhaps. But this cold air is likely to last for a little while too. Here we are into even the second week of December. And you can see we're set up well for what may be some extended cold air on the eastern half of the country. So kind of exciting there. I can also show you too our temperatures at the surface as well. We're going to take a look at the Euro for this. And more or less what I want to point out with this is just give you a general idea of what we're talking about, because these temps, I wouldn't take them verbatim. But at this point, we can say for sure as we head into that back half of the week, here's your Thursday, this is Thanksgiving. Those are lows that are going to be near 0 degrees in the north central U.S. That's that cold air just beginning to spill in. Meanwhile, take a look at this. Florida, Georgia, these areas in the southeast, we're talking 70-degree highs, perhaps, easily into the 70s, in fact, on Thanksgiving. But as we head into Friday, you're going to see, again, this cold air really begins to take over. We're talking about lows that may be sub-zero in the north central U.S., and in the southeast, where it was previously warm, take a look at this as we head into the weekend here. Saturday, first off, we're talking about lows that may reach the upper 30s in northern Florida out there. So we go from highs in the 70s to perhaps temps in the 30s out in the southeast. Of course, that's pretty darn cold out there for this time of year. And even the eastern portion of the U.S. out here, these are your lows. Nothing unusual, but we're talking easily lows into the 20s and teens. So that's a taste of winter that we haven't really had since last year. And this is, again, going to be taking us into the weekend, through the weekend. And again, I'll give you a little sneak peek at next week. This would be perhaps around the middle of next week. And at this point, we're talking about temps lows that'll be near zero in the north central U.S. There's some hints that we could even see lows into the 20s in up to northern Florida. I'm not fully on board with that yet, but it gives you an idea of the kind of cold air we're talking about, easily teens into the northeast. So The pattern is changing, but as this pattern changes, we have some volatility in our weather too. We're talking about an atmospheric river event in California. We're also talking about, and actually that's going to reach Colorado as well. We're also talking about the potential for some rain and snow, a nor'easter. So I'm going to continue into that part of the forecast. If you're just interested in the nor'easter, you can skip ahead in the video. I got chapters on the bottom here. But if you're interested in everything or just the atmospheric river, well, keep on watching. Let's jump into that and take a look at what's ahead this week and who may be looking at a pretty good snowfall. Turning our attention to the West Coast, where we're expecting yet another atmospheric river event to unfold. You may remember this past week, there was a big one across Washington, Oregon, Northern California. We're expecting a similar type of thing, but a little bit farther south and perhaps not quite as extreme. But without further ado, let's take a look at what we're seeing here. And I want you to pay close attention to these green colors, which originate in the Pacific Ocean and reach the West Coast here, especially more of the central and southern portion of California. That's your atmospheric river, and those green colors indicate above average, basically moisture in the atmosphere, and that's where our rain originates from. So if we move this forward a bit more, you're going to see here on Monday, that green and even those blue colors, which indicate very moisture-rich air, they reach the California coastline, and that's when our atmospheric river event begins. And you'll see this as we move into Tuesday. Many of those green colors are going to continue to extend into places like Colorado and Arizona and even Utah out there. So it doesn't just stop at the coastline. This thing keeps on chugging along into the U.S. here. And this will continue. Now we're into the end of Tuesday, heading into Wednesday. You still see it here. And now it is beginning to break apart a bit. But even into Wednesday, this atmospheric river is likely to maintain itself before it becomes a little more diffuse and perhaps loses some of its power only once we get through the end of Thursday. Now we're at the end of Thursday here. You can kind of see it's more of a clump, and that tells us that there won't be quite as much convergence, which is really what drives these atmospheric river events. We can also take a look here at our precipitation map. Let me get down to a little more of a local level so you can see more clearly what we're looking at here. I'm going to use the Euro. I was looking at this earlier. I just kind of liked what it was spitting out the most. It was very similar to the American model anyway. But here we are on, we'll start here on Monday. And here it is. That's your moisture punching into California. This is how that moisture we just looked at actually becomes rain. And watch as this extends out much farther west from just the coastline. So Monday, we're seeing some of that heavy rain, and I'll have to mention as well, the mountains out here are going to see very, very heavy snow and persistent snow too. We'll get to totals in a moment. But here we are Monday, heading into Tuesday. You still see more moisture coming through. It's now reaching into places like Nevada, Utah, even Colorado. Heading into Wednesday, that precip does begin to get cut off. And into Thursday, we really don't have anything left over. But there's a chance that even into Wednesday, there is a little bit extra stuff that continues to fall here. But nonetheless, it will still continue into the Colorado area through the end of Wednesday and perhaps even to the early hours of Thursday here. So that's our atmospheric river like you just saw right there. We can take a look at the precip totals. I'm going to go just to our QPF totals here. And this doesn't tell us anything about snow. This is just total precip. And here we are at the end of Wednesday. We're looking at areas that may see as high as 4 to 8 inches of rain in the mountain, or precip, I should say, in the mountains, 4 to 8 inches, because as that moisture hits the mountains, it's forced to rise, and as it rises, it condenses and then falls as rain. So those mountains really do a good job at squeezing moisture out of the atmosphere. But even for the coastline here, anywhere you're seeing those red colors, we're talking about 2 to 4 inches of rain. Like I said, those gold colors are 4 to 8. And you can see the mountains out here in the Utah area and even in Colorado are spots that we could see at least 2 inches of rain. And it's certainly that will cause some disturbances, especially when you consider that a lot of this is going to fall as snow. So let me go to our winter weather. And I'm going to go to the national blend of models for this. I like what it spits out in terms of snow amounts, just a little bit more here. So let's take a look. And again, those mountains, they squeeze moisture of the atmosphere, but that doesn't mean it's all rain. You get snow a lot of times too. And we're talking about massive amounts of snow in the mountains out here. These are amounts that may easily be measured in, easily feet, but we're talking about maybe 6+ feet of snow out here. Anywhere you're seeing those white colors, that's where it really exceeds the color scale. So 6+ feet of snow is expected in those mountains. What we can see out here across Utah, and remember the Rockies out here in Colorado as well, where we saw some of those higher amounts of precip. Anywhere you're seeing the orange colors, that suggests we're looking at 2 to 4 feet of snow and even more in some spots. So again, 6+ for the mountains out here in California, and we're talking about 2 to 4 plus in the mountains there in Utah and in Colorado as well. So this event really going to bring some impacts, not just to the California coastline in terms of rain and potential flooding, but snow to the mountains. Good for ski resorts, of course. But another impactful event nonetheless. So now that we've talked about the cold air coming in, we've talked about the atmospheric river here at the beginning of the week, it's time to get into perhaps the biggest story this week, which is the potential for snow on Thanksgiving impacting travel across the country from Wednesday through the upcoming weekend. That's going to impact much of the central U.S. and especially the eastern U.S. as well. Let's jump into that forecast and talk about what's ahead as we move farther into the upcoming week. We now turn to the East Coast and the central U.S., where impacts around Thanksgiving, the busiest travel days of the year, are likely to be reasonably high. We're talking about a system that may even bring snow on Thanksgiving Day to many, and to many more, heavy rain and wind. It really looks like a powerful storm that's going to have wide-reaching impacts. So let's take a look at what we're seeing in terms of the next few days. And we're going to start with the European model here on Monday. And Monday actually looks pretty quiet, which is good. We start off the week without too much to worry about. But we got this guy here, which begins to form on Tuesday. And this is not the main event. This is just a little precursor, but it's got a cold front. It's going to drag across much of the country, at least the central and eastern half of the country, particularly on Tuesday, and it will bring a decent rainfall to places like New England. Could even be some snow on the back end here, out across the Great Lakes. Lake effect snow is possible even into the mid-Atlantic as this thing brushes through the area as well. But it's what happens as we move into the middle of the week that we're looking more closely at. I want you to pay close attention to this guy here. This is, like I said, just one possibility. This is the European model, and I just wanted to give you an idea of what's going to happen here. We'll take a very close look at everything in a moment. Now, there is that system. This is more of a worst-case scenario. It blows up basically on Thursday, it deepens significantly, and as it does, it's able to draw in more cold air, and it creates the potential for a decent bit of snow on the north side of it. And on the south side, quite a bit of rain, and that's even the potential for some storms, a low chance there could be some severe weather. Not sold on that yet, but it's something we'll monitor. Here we are on Thursday. This is Thanksgiving, of course. All that blue color, that's pretty heavy snow across portions of the Northeast now. A lot of rain out there, too. And I mean, this is really a very powerful storm system on the European here through Thursday into Friday. And really, once we get to the weekend, it begins to move out. But on the back end, you'd still have a lot of lake effect snow, and that would, of course, have impacts for people who are right along the shorelines there. But that, like I said, that's the European model. That's more of a worst-case scenario, and I want to take a look at really everything here. So we're going to compare a couple of these models that'll give you a good idea of what may happen, our range of possibilities, and we're going to start here. This would be on late Wednesday night, more or less. So there's your European model. This is a pretty good storm starting off. It's a 1,003 millibar low, not bad in the central U.S., but let me show you two other solutions here. This is the Canadian, which at the same time really doesn't show much. And the GFS, that's the American model, it shows something a little more interesting. We have this piece of energy out here, and we have this piece of energy here. What the European model's doing that these guys aren't is it's phasing them together. It's allowing it to become a powerful storm, and if it does, you are going to see heavy snow across portions of the northern U.S. and the potential for some heavy rain and even storms farther south. If these two pieces don't phase together, like we're seeing on the Canadian and the American, well, you're not going to have a very powerful storm. You're not going to have much snow because it's not going to draw in much cold air, and you're not likely to see as many storms. So that's the big question right here. Do these pieces phase together? We'll move this forward 6 hours. I'm going to show you again. Here's the Euro. We saw what it was doing a moment ago. It creates this powerful storm system all by itself. Meanwhile, you got the Canadian out here. There's a piece of energy lagging and a piece of energy ahead of time, and the Canadian's a little slow too. The American model here, there's your storm forming, but it's leaving this piece of energy behind as well. And you can see in the American model here, this is again on Thanksgiving. It's dropping rain across a good chunk of the southeast into the Midwest here, but it's not a massive storm like we're seeing on the Euro. All right, move this forward into Thanksgiving a little farther. There's your Euro. We looked at that. There's the snow. There's the rain. There's that cold front, the tail that could bring some strong storms. We can take a look at the Canadian. There it is again. We have a little piece of energy out here, and there's the piece in the back end. Rain for a good amount of people on Thanksgiving. There will be travel impacts. There's going to be a lot of wind here, but nothing massive. And on the American model, I kind of like what it's doing. It's right in between the two. Still a good rainfall out here. Still quite a bit of wind on the backside, but not as much power in the storm system. Moving it forward late into Thanksgiving, If this does occur, as Zero suggests, we're talking about what is going to be massive travel impacts across really the entire eastern U.S. because a lot of these hubs will be impacted by rainstorms, wind, snow. But we can see here on the Canadian model, there's your piece of energy leaving New England. We could still see snow in this case, but it would be light and mainly in the hills. There's your second piece of energy, so it kind of keeps this in play on Thanksgiving across the southeast. On the American model, again, there are your two pieces. Once more, move this forward farther. We saw the European model, big storm out in the northeast, huge storm. Canadian, it likes to prolong the rain here. We're not done yet because we have two separate waves of rain coming through. Still going to impact travel here on Thanksgiving. It's going to be wet, especially in the southeast and east coast. American model, very similar, keeps us a little farther south. That's decent rainfall out there. It's decent rainfall, but notice this is more out to sea as well. So New England impacted much less. The northeast as a whole impacted much less. European model, there we are, Friday morning. It's still cranking out tons of snow. The Canadian, still cranking out a good amount of rain. Like I said, a lot of wind here as well, and we're still going to see a good chunk of rain. Could be some snow in the mountains in the northeast in this solution. Same thing with the American model, but it's much lighter stuff. We're not talking about anything as widespread and heavy. There's your Euro, begins to pull this thing away on Friday. The Canadian and the American do keep this in play a little bit longer, but also notice that they're much farther south. Sometimes we call these southern sliders. It allows them to move out to sea, and they get out quicker without impacting quite as many people. It's not going to pivot as much. But still, could be some light snow out there in the mountains. Certainly, we still have lake effect snow with the American and the Canadian. It's likely we're going to see that no matter what here. But the Canadian does lock in rain a bit more, and as you can see here, we do have the potential for some snow in the northeast with the Canadian as well. And here's where the system begins to move out here on Friday. The American's already gone. It took that southern slider path and it left. The Canadian's trying to hold on to some snow out there as we head into the beginning of Saturday, in fact, but I don't expect this to be a very widespread snowfall. It's more for those highest elevations in the northeast, where if there is going to be snow, I believe that's the most likely scenario. But I also want to talk about this European model run right here. And by the way, Saturday, it's really out, just so you know. There's the European. Still lake effect snow, by the way. I guess I should mention that. Lake effect snow Saturday, even into Sunday. And you can see that in all three of our models. So that's a pretty good bet here. But in terms of massive winter storm impacts, this thing is gone by Saturday. But I want to go back a little bit. I want to talk about more or less, if that worst case scenario played out, the European model, where you do get a massive storm. Maybe it's a best case scenario if you love the snow, by the way. Don't want to make too many assumptions here. Let's go back to Thanksgiving. We'll move into, this is sort of the end of Thanksgiving into Friday. And we'll zoom in a little bit more, actually. This is more for the Northeast, where if there could be some big snow, it's more likely to be out here. What you're noticing is that there is rain across basically anywhere near the coastline. This is not an event that I expect will bring snow to the coastline. And there's a couple of reasons for that. First of all, this does take a path farther inland, like you're seeing here. It's just going to be too warm. That warm air is going to inundate. It's just simply going to be too warm. I'm going to zoom out once again, though. And even if this were to go farther out to sea, like a little bit farther south, that's, my bad for doing that again. That's where this storm may not allow the warm air to get as far inland. But the problem is if we look out here, there is no area of high pressure. That's important because high pressure does a lot of work to filter colder air into the U.S. when these storms are on the coastline. Without that high pressure system, even if this storm goes farther out into the ocean and does not allow warm air to get as far inland, I do not expect there would be snow at the coastline because we simply do not have a source of reliable cold air. So if you really want snow, the best bet for this, as always, but especially in this case, is going to be in the mountains, the highest hills, and farther north, closer to the Canadian border here. I do not see any realistic scenarios where we're going to see any kind of snow at the coastline, unless it's some flurries after the system moves out as a result of lake effect snow. So I want to make that clear. But this storm is certainly one that we do need to be watching. I'll show you amounts here too, just in case you're curious for rain and snow. We're going to take a look at the NBM once again. Like I mentioned before, I like it for precip. I think it gives you a good balanced forecast. So here we are through the week. We're just going to go, and of course, Tuesday's rain's baked into this. It's not going to be a big one, but anyway, you're seeing those purple colors out here. That's where we're talking about the potential for 1 to 2 inches of rain. That's pretty good across the southeast and east coast. You can see 1 to 2 inches is quite possible out there in the Northeast. And this is good because we have drought conditions across really this entire corridor of rainfall. And to see a widespread 1 to 2 inches, even 2 to 3, is encouraging in terms of that. And as far as snow goes, I'll give you a quick look at the snow totals here on the NBM as well. Well, you can see out there we have totals that are basically approaching 6 inches in spots where you're seeing those purple colors. But notice where they are occurring. This is next to Lake Ontario, next to Lake Erie. These are lake effect snow bands you're seeing. There's your Lake Michigan bands, Superior up here. That's lake effect snow we're looking at. The only place we're seeing a significant amount of snow get spit out is, like I said, in New England. And if we zoom in on this, it would really be kept to the highest elevations. Those are mountains right there, your Green Mountains, your White Mountains, northern Maine. So I think this is actually pretty realistic, what we're seeing here. And we're a ways out. This forecast is going to change, but this is right on par with what I've been thinking. And what you're seeing is that sharp cutoff away from elevation. I mean, you can see it pretty clearly there into the, into New York. And anything that falls along the coastline out here, that's going to be some light stuff after the system moves through. So you may see snowflakes, but I wouldn't get too excited about snow as the take-home message here. That said, that sort of sums up our forecast for this week. Let me jump into full screen and just say thanks for tuning in once again. And I'm a big winter weather lover, so I'm not trying to... I'm not rooting against snow. If anything, I'm rooting for it. But what is encouraging is that because that cold air stays locked in through likely the entire first week of December into the second week, and because the pattern from what I've seen stays a bit more active, I do like our odds at perhaps getting another run, or even two if we're fortunate, at another chance for a storm. Not saying it's going to be the storm of the decade, but we certainly are not done with snow chances across the Midwest, across the East Coast. And we certainly have realistic opportunities to see snow from this point moving forward. So we'll wrap it there. Hopefully you can get a little excited about the potential for winter weather. Actually, I meant to show you too. Let me go back really quick. I know someone's going to ask. So what about the central U.S.? Well, snow here really does not look like a big deal to me. I should have mentioned this earlier. So sorry for leaving you hanging there. But perhaps a coating. Perhaps a dusting if this system really becomes strong. Otherwise, it just really isn't going to be much. So with that, we'll wrap things up. So thanks for tuning in, guys. Follow along for more updates. I'll have an update on this storm as it gets a little closer. Obviously, travel's a big thing this week, busiest travel week of the year. And if you haven't been following along, we do these every Sunday, weekly weather updates, and I'm planning to do a lot more. So happy to have you here. And I hope you guys get to wherever you're going for Thanksgiving safely. If you have any questions ever, you can drop them in the comments. And you can find me on social media anywhere at Tucker Weather. Hopefully I see you a little bit later this week with an update on that storm. And next Sunday for our weekly update as well.